All right, folks, welcome back. Before the break, we played a soundbite of Senator Kelly Loeffler on Fox defending her management of her stock portfolio. She's one of 4 senators being investigated for possible insider trading. Republicans Richard Burr of North Carolina, James Inhofe of Oklahoma, and Democrat Dianne Feinstein of California actively trading right before the coronavirus tanked the stock markets. Multiple reports say that Senator Burr is being investigated by the Justice Department. Meanwhile, Senator Loeffler made more headlines this week after she revealed she sold off millions in stocks in her portfolio, then turned around and invested in a teleconference company and a company that makes protective chemical clothing. According to initial disclosures last month, Loeffler sold as much as $3.1 million worth of stock from January 24th, the day she attended a private briefing. We're now joined by Georgia Congressman Doug Collins. He's the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, also running against Senator Loeffler in Georgia's primary. Congressman Collins, welcome back to the Salcedo Show.
It's always good to be with you.
You've heard the senator's defense and how she said somebody else managed her portfolio, third party, and that she only learns about these trades after the fact. Does that pass the smell test with you, sir?
Well, I don't think it really matters with the smell test with me. It matters with the voters of Georgia. And I'll tell you, the voters of Georgia are furious. And the explanations are not being well received. And in fact, the explanations have changed from that. One of the first interviews that you ran just a few moments ago, almost 2 weeks ago. And since then, we've learned from interviews, and she seemed to have quit doing them, that there's a family member who's an employee of the family who actually interacts with their investment advisors. There is no blind trust. There's no seemingly a buffer except for what she says that she has no idea of what's going on. We've also found out that her husband, Jeff Sprecher, who runs the New York Stock Exchange, also unloaded a great deal of his own company stock and others. So it's just continuing drip. And all at the same time, when we find this out, the perception is terrible. And the people of Georgia are not buying it because they're struggling with their own jobs, their families. They're struggling with members who are sick, just as we are in this whole country. And this is the portrait of what's happening right now. And it's a sad day.
Yeah, and here's what bugs me. The guy that passed you over and appointed her, Brian Kemp, came out, the governor of Georgia, came out today and said he's just learning that people can be asymptomatic with the coronavirus. He's the one who appointed her. And the Republican Senatorial Committee came out and blasted you for even daring to run for this seat. What really bugs me is that Republicans seem to be standing up for this type of nonsense, screwing around with their brand. And it's my opinion that Republicans ought to leave this corruption brand behind with senators like Loeffler. What do you say?
Well, we don't need to be even part of the corruption brand at all. We need to be public servants or public servants. Our first point is when we decide we want to run for office is that we'll put those that we serve and that are elected is first, whether Republican, Democrat, or Independent, doesn't matter. We serve at the public's trust. That came from me. I've understood that for years when I was a pastor, and others, your service. And we don't always get it right. But when you have issues like this, when it comes back to the point of, the question I've never heard her answer is did you go back after this came out and everybody is perception and say, don't do this anymore? She's never really denied that this is a bad thing for our brand, bad thing for what's going on. As we go forward here, I think it's interesting. And, from our perspective, the virus is our first and foremost concern. I've self-quarantined, as you well know, almost 4 weeks ago when we had come into contact with someone at CPAC. So I've known about this for a long time. And those of us who are practicing good practices are trying to get that message out.
Well, OK, let's turn to the coronavirus, because you were one of the staunch defenders of the president against the last sham impeachment. It seems that Adam Schiff, absent anything positive for the American people, in the midst of people sick, dying, or dead, he wants to launch an investigation right now into the Trump administration and their handling of this. What do you make of Adam Schiff and his timing?
I've not made much of Adam Schiff, and there's not much to make out of Adam Schiff because, as I've said many times before, he just struggles with the truth. He can't spell it or tell it, and we've seen this so many times out of him. He is nothing but a focus on getting at this president. Now he's under the guise of wanting to make sure that the monies are spent properly, and how the president went about this. I think the president's response has been spot on since he started. He's appointed the vice president. He's got a team around him. Every day he goes to the microphone, just as he is now, and talking about this and encouraging the American people. And Adam Schiff wants to do a 9/11 style commission. Look, we've seen this from him before. This is the man who said there was corruption in plain sight, that there was collusion in plain sight. He just made it up as he went along. They put all their hopes in the Mueller report and the Russia investigation. And what we found was that came up to nothing. Even if he was allowed to do this, it would come up to the same thing because the president is working on behalf of the American people. Adam Schiff needs to take care of his district. And Adam Schiff people are tired of a person who just simply wants to attack a president for helping the American people and doing what he was elected to do. And not focusing on his own job.
Right. Well, then there's that. I'm forced to wonder if Mr. Schiff, if he does get this investigation off the ground, will investigate his own political party, because he seems to be focused exclusively on the president. The president on January 29th took decisive action by stopping the flights coming in from China into the United States, infected communist China. Now, I'm going to play a couple of sound bites for you. One is from February 24th, the Speaker of the House, and what she was saying, and one is from March 10th, Democrat presidential candidate de Blasio, the mayor of New York. Watch.
It's exciting to be here, especially at this time, to be able to be unified with our community. We want to be vigilant about what it might be on what is out there in other places. We want to be careful about how we deal with it, but we do want to say to people, come to Chinatown. Here we are.
We have 25 cases as of this morning, and we care deeply about each of those individuals, but against the backdrop of 8.6 million people. And for the vast majority of New Yorkers, life is going on pretty normally right now, and we want to encourage that. If you're under 50 and you're healthy, which is most New Yorkers, there's very little threat here. This disease, even if you were to get it, basically acts like a common cold or flu. And transmission is not that easy.
So there you've got de Blasio saying transmission on March 10th, transmission is not that easy. And of course, doctors have been telling us back in March that it's highly communicable. And then you got the Speaker of the House a month after the president stopped flights from China. She's saying, come out, no social distancing. What is that? Come on out to Chinatown. So these Democrats, if they want to start this investigation, don't they have a lot to answer for as well?
I think if they hold the president to response as he went forward, then of course those clips are the very thing that you would actually look at. It's time for us to realize we're in this together. But I'll go back to Adam Schiff for a second, because he was the one that brought this up. Where was Adam Schiff as chairman of the Intelligence Committee in December when he was getting daily reports on this issue coming out in December and early January? Instead of actually running his Intelligence Committee for the last year, he's running it as a private "let's get the president" campaign. And so my question is go back and do your job, Adam. You're chairman of the Intelligence Committee. Go back and do that work for the American people. And then when you start investigating, look at the whole picture. As we went forward, the president has adapted to every news that he has gotten so that it would help the American people, from stopping flights early on, from going out and changing and making sure he has the best advice. And for simply to say that we're going to investigate the Trump administration, why don't we also, look at the total picture? But my main goal for Adam Schiff is just do your job. You failed at that miserably over the last year and a half. It's why the American people have lost trust many times in our intelligence community and others, and especially with what he did in the sham impeachment. I'm not sure why he's even giving, interviews anymore, especially telling the rest of the world how it ought to be done.
Well, from Adam Schiff to Nancy Pelosi to Chuck Schumer, why do you think these Democrats are not? Maybe Chuck Schumer was a bad example because he is actually the only Democrat I can think of who has come out strongly against communist China. Communist China, a study that's published out there, says if they had come clean with the world just 3 weeks earlier than they did, we could have contained this virus in China. There would have been no pandemic. The world's economies would not have been in tatters right now, and thousands would still be alive. Why do you think Democrats don't want to criticize the communist Chinese and they save all of their ire for the president of the United States?
Because their agenda has become painfully obvious since the election of 2018. All they care about is defeating this president in this year's election cycle. So they'll ignore the rest of the world. They'll ignore things going on to only try and focus it on the president. And it's becoming so obvious, and yet they just keep running right into the cycle. They keep running right into the news to say, here is the problem. And they won't focus on a country that, look, this is what a communist country does. They don't want bad press. They don't want their people to know that they are not in control. So they suppressed it. And we're seeing this. They need to be investigated. If there's an investigation that needs to happen, it needs to be into China. It needs to be in why this got out of the market, why we're opening up wet markets again. That is the most amazing thing to me. China needs to shut down wet markets now. This is not an issue for later on or discussion. It should be happening now. Those are the questions we need to be asking about China. And yet, Speaker Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and others just turn a blind eye to this because they're so focused on one thing, and that is the dislike of this president and trying to convince Americans that he's not doing what he is doing. Their problem is the American people can see the man leading every day, and they know it's not true.
Yeah, last question. A lot of lawmakers, none of them Democrats, but a lot of other lawmakers are very concerned about the supply chains that are in China. Not only our normal supply chains for everyday products, but also our pharmaceuticals. How committed are you in Congress, whatever your job is going to be in the future in Congress, how committed are you to make sure that America divests out of China and quits turning over vital infrastructure, vital resources out of our enemy's hands because China is behaving like an enemy?
They are. And I think this is what has been focused for the last few years. You remember, Chris, how they actually criticized the president for talking about bringing manufacturing jobs back from China, bringing our productions back to China, making sure our supply chains. This is when he was talking about trade agreements for the last 3 years. Now we're seeing the results of that, in which they control a lot of the supply chain for pharmaceuticals and other products. We need to bring that back home. We need to make sure that our supply chain is secure. But I'm going to also bring up another point. I'm very concerned about the world oil market right now. Remember, we had just gotten to the place where we were energy independent. Our oil market, the country was using a total commitment to all parts of energy, so we could become energy independent with the cheapest energy in the world. And now you have the oil prices that have dropped drastically because of this virus, and you have Saudi Arabia and Russia dumping oil onto the market in which there's no market for right now. And there's many of us who are looking at this saying, okay, is this a play by other parts of the market to try and destroy an American market that is run by the free enterprise system, not run by the corporate government structure in these countries? That's another area that I would want to look at as we go forward.
Congressman, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We covered a lot of issues on the Chris Salcedo Show. We'll talk again, sir. Thank you very much, folks.